On your screen there, you see Nick Principe, and he has many wonderful stories about the mandali. Been with Baba for a long time, especially he's spent a lot of time with Baba's immediate family. And, that means, Jal and the twins, Rustom and Sohrab and Gulnar and the whole bunch of them. And I want to mention that the word mandali, which is a word that Baba used to describe his disciples, is really a household word. And when somebody came to your house, a guest, and you came to the door, you would yell, you'd say mandali, mandali, meaning all the members of the household should come. So basically, it means a household member. So it's kind of a very endearing way that Baba, referred to his mandali as just family, as household members. And but Nick has a lot of wonderful stories about the mandali, and although they were all different and colorful and had different approaches to Baba, and they were always so very personal in their love for us. And they are, you might say, embodiments of of what it takes to try to please Baba, with every little thing that you do, that we were seeing that demonstrated in front of our very eyes. So Nick lives in Myrtle Beach, but he spends a good bit of time over there in Assisi, what made famous by St. Francis, and Baba also went there in the 30s. And I've asked Nick has some good jokes, and he has even some jokes that Jal used to tell to Baba. So now he says, don't hesitate to ask him any, stories or questions. And I'm going to ask him about the various mandali and and some of the exchanges he had with them. So Nick, the
Yeah,
floor is yours.
I will. I'm going to preface it by saying I don't mind anybody wants to interrupt me, ask a question if I'm not clear about something. Please feel free. The only thing I would ask you to do is make a note of where I've left off because I won't remember. Uh, but I find that some of these stories, it's easier for me to recall them if something prompts me. Like if somebody says, "Well, did any of the Mandali ever say anything about what did they say about obedience?" Okay, that's easier for me than trying to remember a particular story about because then I have to think of the subject and the person. So feel free to question me at any point. Um, I'm going to preface it by saying that my earliest contact with the Mandali was by mail, and it was 1969, 70, 71, 72. I found out about Baba in 1968 in Florida. I had friends who were going to travel overland to meet Baba, and they were in a letter contact with Baba's family. And that's how I got in contact, especially with Jal, with Baba's brother. So I was writing back and forth to the Mandali in the very early days. And my first trip to India was in 1976. And then I've been back about, I guess, 9 or 10 times since then. And I've been very blessed that and matter of fact, I'm going to go for a minute right there. I said something to Erich one time about feeling lucky. He said, with Baba, never use the word luck, use the word blessed. Our relationship with Baba has nothing to do with luck. So, so I was able to write to them. They responded in those days. They weren't busy, as busy. As a matter of fact, my first trip to India, there were only 6 Westerners there. Now, of course, there's throngs. At that time, there were more Mandali than there were pilgrims. Um, and I like anybody who's been with Baba and the mandali, we all say the same thing. You regret that you didn't take full advantage of the time with them. I always felt like I missed something. But Baba was very kind and gracious to me. He allowed me a lot of intimate time with them. I was a hairdresser and a nurse. So I got to have physical contact because I would do the ladies' hair and some of the men, I cut their hair. And then after I finished nursing school, I was in my 30s when I went to nursing school. And then I did volunteer work at the clinic. So I had a lot of intimate contact with them. That, as a matter of fact, one story that pops in mind, the mandali were, uh, to me, they are sort of like the you know, I think of the board of directors of a corporation. That's the upper echelon, like the perfect masters, and those people run everything when the avatar is physically not present. That I think we all read and know about that. But I see the mandali, to me, they were like the functioning board of directors on the planet. And these were people who held these jobs because they earned them uh, through whatever they did to get these positions. And I want one of those jobs when they become available in the future. And Eric said they would. Eric said that the, he said it's like a parade. He said the Baba, if you think of Baba as the drum major, so, and he said the mandali, we are in the first row behind Baba. He said, and then you are in the row behind and other row behind. He said, now what happens when the drum major starts the parade? He lifts the baton, he takes a step. There's a fraction of a second delay before the first row takes a step. Then another fraction of a second delay. But the parade has already started, but the people in the back don't know that the parade has started. They have to wait. And then when it comes time to stop, it's the same thing. The drum major stops, and again a delay. He said, we are in the first row. So we see firsthand what Baba's doing. And he said, and as we are finished with our, we don't have to come back anymore. He said, then everybody moves up a row. So to me, those jobs are open. They're going to be, some of them will be available because the mandali, they'll come back in various, they may have more, I don't know how many more lifetimes anybody has. I don't even think in those terms. But if one of them is available, I would like to apply. And Eric told me the way to do that. He said, do not be a seeker. He said, become the sought. He said, rather than you looking for Baba, have Baba look for you when he comes back. And he said, how will that happen? And then he told a story. He said, suppose the president of the United States has a meeting and you happen to be in the meeting for whatever your position is, but you happen to be there in a large group of people. Now that you don't know the president doesn't know you. He said, now, but as the president looks over the throng of people and he acknowledges the presence of various people that he knows, he's about somehow or other, his glance falls on you. And he will ask one of his aides, he said, find out who that is. He's now, and Baba, that's one of the ways Baba draws people. He can just see somebody and come with me, I want you. He said, but he said, the way to do it, he said, suppose you do some great service for your country and you really have sacrificed and done something. He said, when you're in that meeting, then the president says, where is Nick Principe? Find him, bring him to me. He said, Eric said, that's the way you should be with Baba. Do things so that he looks for you when he comes back. And I think the way we do that, Eric told me, he said, involve Baba in everything you do. everything. If you're fixing a tuna fish sandwich, just ask Baba, Baba, did you like tuna fish? Have a conversation with him. The, the, the mandali, especially the ladies, Mara would never, they would, even after Baba dropped the body, there was always a place set for Baba. Mara would not touch her tea or anything else before asking Baba, Baba, would you like some tea? Please join us, Baba. They continued to live as if Baba was physically present. And I say as if because that's a phrase that I would use, but to them, I am convinced that they actually experienced Baba's presence. Because he had said for 100 years and a little more after I dropped the body, it's the same as me being in the body. So they lived it. And I asked Erich one time, I've always been, one of the blessings that Bob has given me, I've been, not only did I have intimacy with them, I was pretty ridiculous. I would not be afraid to ask them anything. I would ask anything that came to my mind, and they were all very gracious as far as answering it. But so ask them. Erich would say, "Ask Baba, ask Baba, ask Baba." Bao would tell me, he'd say, "You're entitled to have your preferences. If you like, Baba, if you feel you should be, you've read someplace, or you have a feeling, let's say, that you should." Baba said, "Be resigned to my wish and will." He said, "So yes, be resigned to his wish and will, but you are entitled to your preferences. You just ask Baba, Baba, can I have a cookie? If he says no, you can't have a cookie, then that's it. But he may give you one. So we can ask him, ask him, ask him." He said, "But like a child would ask a mother. Don't be angry and disappointed if he doesn't give it to you." Yeah, Erich was, I would say, of all of them, of all the Mandali, Erich was the most man I ever met in my life. And gentle, but at the same time, I just had this feeling, even in his later years, into his 70s, almost 80, I think he could have broken me in half physically if he wanted to. He had that inner strength that manifested itself. And being with him, that's what you felt. But he was gentle. As a matter of fact, there's a wonderful story that I had heard about Baba. There was a tailor who came to see Baba. Baba was in seclusion at Mirazad. And he went unannounced and asked if he could see Baba. And they told him, "No, Baba's in seclusion. He's not seeing anybody. What is it that you want?" And this fellow is a local tailor from Nagar. He said, "Well," he said, "I just had this desire. I'd like to make a coat for Baba." He said, he said, but the Mandali, whoever talked to him, said, "Well, we're not to disturb Baba. He got strict orders." He said, "Please just ask Baba, even if I could see him just from a distance. I'm such an expert tailor. I don't have to measure him. I don't have to get close to him. If I see him even from a distance, I'll be able to make something for him." So the Mandali went and put this before Baba, and Baba did come out on the veranda of the house. And this fellow was back by Mandali Hall at Mirazad. Baba stepped out on the veranda and waved to him. And the fellow looked carefully at Baba from that distance, which, I don't know, Jeff, what would you estimate that distance to be? 100 yards or more, right? Something. But anyway, he was happy and he left. Now he comes back sometime later, and Baba's out of seclusion, and he's very happy, this fellow, because now he's made this coat for Baba. And Baba put it on. And Erich, when he was telling me this, he said the sleeves came down hanging below Baba's hand. The coat was so long, it was hanging. This tailor said, "I can't believe it." He said he looked huge on the platform there. And he said he looked huge. He couldn't believe. Baba was, I think, as far as the physical measurement, might have been what, 5'4", something like that. But this fellow could not make a garment for him.
5'8". Mara said he was 5'8".
Yeah, he may have been when he was younger, but like the rest of us, as he got older, of course, we all have a tendency to, but in any event, give or take a couple of inches, it's, but the fact is, even at the arms, I remember that specifically, is what Eric said, the coat sleeves, rather, were hanging way below where his hands were. He said, Baba, it looked like a child with his father's coat on. But so, and the reason why I mentioned that, why that pops to mind, Baba's nephews, the twins, I've known them since they were teenagers, and now we're all about the same age. They're 75, 76 years old. They gave a talk in Myrtle Beach one time. Now, the three of us physically are pretty much the same in physical build. They may be 1 to 2 inches taller than I am. When I was in the meeting place and they were on the stage, when they got off the stage, I looked at them and they looked huge to me. And my sense with that, and this is one thing I sensed with some of the mandali, not all of them, when they were working for Baba, their presence was different. Their presence was, all I can say was I was stupefied by it, because I felt like as I walked up to greet them after the meeting, I felt like I was looking up at them like they were that, a head, at least a head taller than me, which I knew they weren't. But that was how they looked to whatever it was that happened, I don't know. And so being with them, and I saw that, I was fortunate enough, I've hosted Bao about 9 times when he came to the States, when he used to come to the States. Bao was a real character, and great fun, great fun to be with, to be able to host them. But, and just to give you an idea again about how the mandali would, you had to be on your toes when you were around them. You had to be on your toes. And the reason why I mention that is because it's a glimpse of how they had to be with Baba. They couldn't slack off for a minute. So Bao, when he stayed with me, we were doing a public meeting. He was going to do a public meeting, and it was in Raleigh. I was living in Chapel Hill. So, and I would drive him wherever he needed to go. Well, there was a very close Baba lover, who it was, doesn't matter, wanted to drive Bao to Raleigh. And he asked me if it's okay. And I said, well, it's got nothing to do with me. It's up to Bao. If he says it's okay, you drive him. I don't mind. So anyway, he approached Bao, told him, he said, I'd like to drive you to Raleigh. Is it okay? And Bao, and he had this, he would get a twinkle in his eye, and I knew there was mischief afoot. And he said, do you think you can drive me? You think it'll be safe? Everything will be okay? He said, oh, yes. He said, very experienced, not a youngster. I mean, this is an adult male. And he said, you follow Nick. And he said, I'll be right behind, because he knows where you're going. He said, and you won't lose sight of him. And we agreed to that. So he gets in the car. He got lost 3 times on the way to Raleigh. By the time we got to Raleigh, he said to me, he was so flustered. He said, I don't know what happened. He said, I was behind you, and the next thing, there's something else going on, and I didn't know what, I completely lost you. He said, you have to drive him back. He said, I can't drive him anymore. And this was somebody who was very close to Bao. So whatever it was that the mandali did, and like I said, it was a little hint of how it would have been with Baba. And forgive me if I'm jumping around here, but these things are, as they pop in mind. Fred Winterfeld, who was, if everybody knew Fred, he was the caretaker here for many years, he and Ella. And he told me that he got to drive Baba. He wanted to drive Baba in the worst way. And so they're on the center, and he asked Baba if he can drive him, and Baba said, from the barn to Baba's house. Fred was living there. He was the caretaker. Baba said, "Do you know the way?" He said, "Yes, Baba, of course I know the way." Fred said he got lost. And he said he's on the road, and all of a sudden there's a tree where there wasn't supposed to be a tree. And but he said to Baba, he said, "Baba, somebody planted a tree while we were gone," keeping his sense of humor. And Baba just laughed about it. And then eventually, but the same, he said, he couldn't concentrate. And he told me a lovely story. Again, just a little bit of how Baba would tease and play with people, but yet at the same time remind them who he was. Because he would have to remind the mandali, he would say, "Don't forget that I am God." That was Baba's gesture. He said, because the mandali would say they saw him as an old man. I mean, they lived with him, they saw his humanity. They saw him suffering, they saw him being hurt, they saw him, sort of creaking and groaning. And Baba would say, "Don't forget, I am God." And as a matter of fact, Erich said one time, and some of these things, of course, are printed, they've been told before, so you may have heard it, but Baba was in Mandali Hall after the accidents, and he was making an effort to get up. And Francis Brabazon, who was a stonemason before, before in his younger days, and so he's a very strong man. One of Baba's mandali, the Australian. So he goes one arm to help Baba. Erich is on the other arm, and like I say, Erich is like a wrestler. And Baba, Erich said, as he's describing it, Baba was so weak, and he put his arms like this, and he says he was slouched a little bit like this, like a weak person would be after these injuries. And they took Baba's arm, and Baba started to get up, and Erich said Baba just flung his arms like this. Both of them went tumbling in Mandali Hall. But Erich and Francis said, "Baba, you are so weak." And that's when he said, "Don't forget, I am God." Okay, so he'd have to remind us. He reminds us all the time that he is approachable. His humanity is how we approach him, but we mustn't ever forget his divinity. And the mandali, I think they recognize that divinity. And that was one of the reasons why I think Baba drew them, because they had whatever they did to earn that. I asked Elizabeth Patterson one time whether she missed Baba, because she had lived in India. She spent so much time there, and then in letter contact all the time. She said, "Oh, no." I said, "You don't miss Baba?" She said, "No, he's so much more available now." I said, "I don't understand." She said, "When Baba was in the body, we can only see him when he allowed us to." He said, "Now he's available all the time." She said, "Baba, when he was in the body, was like a bottle of perfume with a stopper on it." He said, "When he dropped the body, the stopper came off and the perfume is spilled." And I think the Mandali recognized that and saw that and lived with it. Mani explained one time, because Baba would always tell the Mandali, "Mera loves me more than anybody. Mera loves me most." And he said, "Yes, Baba, we know," because Baba would tell them that. And then periodically again, he would say, "You know why I love Mera most?" And they said, "Baba, you tell us." And she said, "Yes, because she loves me most." And Mani thought, how is that possible? They all love Baba. How do you measure love? I mean, Baba can measure it, of course, I guess, but well, I'm sure, does he spend his time? I mean, you've got an ounce, you've got 2 ounces, you've got 6. How do you measure love for the human? How do we think about love? And then she said that there was a group, and this was on her mind, but there was a program at Guru Prasad. And Baba was sitting in a chair, easy chair, very hot, throngs of people. The women were off to the side behind the screen as usual. And people would come and bow before Baba and they'd touch his feet, and Baba would bend over to maybe touch their hand or put his hand on their head. And Baba, Mani said she could see from the side, Baba was just dripping with perspiration. And Erich was on the dais with Baba, and he had a towel and he would blot Baba's forehead. But she said Mara gestured to Erich to take a pillow and put it behind Baba's back because she was sure his back was bothering him. And she said she realized at that moment that Mara's love was different because Mara anticipated what Baba would want. And we don't anticipate. She said, this is Mani talking about herself and the other Mandalis. She said, we would do anything for Baba that he wanted us to do, but we did not anticipate what he would want. And that Mara did. Mara would anticipate what he wanted. Yeah. They just, I think they were, to me at that time when I met them, I was in my 30s. They were in their, I guess, 50s, 60s, 70s. They were like aunts and uncles. They were, when I found out about Baba, there were almost no books available where I was. There were I think 4 or 5 books. God Speaks, which I didn't have a copy of. Avatar, Gene Adriel's book, The God Man, The Discourses. That might have been it. I knew nothing about anything else. I didn't belong to any Baba group, so although I did, like I said, I knew people who were going overland to meet Baba. Matter of fact, one of these fellas, he's passed now, but he sent Baba money. And Baba sent the money back. He said, I don't want your money, I want your love. So that's that magic word again. How do we find that, you know? I think the easiest way to do it is we have to pretend. Even if we don't know what, I don't know what love is. I use the word, I don't know what it is. Erich said that he was sitting with Baba one day in Mandali Hall, the men were there. Finished the business of the day. Baba would have mail read out and all that. And then Baba dismissed everybody except Erich. And he told Erich, he said to get a chair and bring it up next to him because the Mandali would all sit on the floor. And Erich would sit across from Baba. And Erich said he realized he was what he was thinking of. He didn't say anything to Baba, but when he was thinking of, so many people would talk about Baba's eyes being, you know, like pools of love. And Erich said, I never looked in Baba's eyes because he said I was so busy focusing on his gestures because he had to read out the gestures. So he said, I never really looked at Baba the way other people could. So Baba had him pull his chair up. And Erich said his knees were just about touching Baba's. And Baba told him, just look at me. And Erich said, as he looked at Baba, he said he just started weeping. And Baba said to him, do you love me? And Erich said, I don't know, Baba. I don't know. And Baba said, say you love me. Kiss me on the cheek, and one day you will. So we don't know. We don't know what love is. We use that word. We toss it around like it's a sack of potatoes. I had noticed with Kitty. I never heard Kitty say Jai Baba to anybody. I used to sit outside. I had a lot of contact with Kitty. I would sit outside her office at Dilruba, especially on those nice spring, summer days. There was a screen door. Her office was there. So I was hearing interviews and things. When Kitty and I'm going to preface it by saying I wasn't eavesdropping. I had an unusual relationship with Kitty. I was a hairdresser before I went to nursing school. So when I moved to Myrtle Beach in the 70s, I had a little salon in North Myrtle Beach. And I went to nursing school because Dr. Gower told me to go to nursing school out of the blue. I didn't ask her. She said, go to nursing school. So Kitty always, she would send in those days, there were a lot of men, especially who were unkempt, beards, hair, things. So she would send them up to get groomed. She'd send them to me. But then she always wanted stories because she knew I would hear gossip. And Kitty was a gossip. So when I'd go pick her up for dinner, which we did frequently, and she would always say, oh, I hope you have some good stories, some good gossip for me tonight. Because she knew I would hear things in the salon. But so I never heard her say Jai Baba. So I asked her one time about that. I said, Kitty, I never hear you say Jai Baba. She would always say, God's name be with you. And that struck me because the mandali in India, I'd already been to India, and they all, when everybody leaves, they go, oh, Jai Baba, Jai Baba. So Kitty would say, God's name be with you. When I asked her, she said, Baba's name is sacred. It's not a throwaway word like hello, goodbye. You have to treasure that word. So what I got from that is it's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just, for me, it was like, think about what you're doing. Don't just do something because then it becomes like a church where we all stand up and sit down because the next person's doing it. We don't know why we're doing it. I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I have no idea. It was standing, sitting, standing, sitting. It was kneeling. It was just, I'd watch and see what everybody else was doing. So I think what I got from that exchange with Kitty was to be aware, just be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because as the mandali would always tell us, what Baba's mostly interested in is motive. He's not interested so much in the action as he is the motive for the action. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why? Is it to help? Is it to hurt? I asked Erich one time, I was troubled because in the prayer of repentance, we're asking for forgiveness for hurting somebody's feelings, and we're asking for forgiveness for lying. And I asked Erich, I said, how do you reconcile those two? If you ask me, do you like my new blouse, and I don't like it, and I say I don't like it, and I hurt your feelings, how do I escape that? Erich said, in Baba's world, lying, honesty, he said, has nothing to do with that. He said, honesty has to do with whether you uplift somebody's spirits. If you uplift somebody's spirits, it's the truth. If you degrade somebody's spirits, it's a lie. So, he said, all the rest is just facts. If I ask you how much money you have in your pocket and you have $100, but you tell me you only have $5, that's a fact. He said, and yes, the world might call it lying, but it has nothing. That's not Baba's concern. Baba's not interested in that. He's interested, why are you saying what you're saying? Are you, as long as your motive is to help. And he gave me a really lovely explanation for that. Because I was in business at the time. And he said, now, suppose, he said, you work for somebody, and somebody comes, and your boss is a really good boss. You really like him. He's an honest person, takes care of the staff. So this guy comes and applies for a job, but this man is a thief. He said, so you go and warn your boss about the danger of this guy. He said, now that's truth. because your goal is not to hurt the guy who's applying for the job, it's to protect the boss. He's now, suppose you work for somebody you don't like him, and you keep hoping that something happens that he's going to suffer, this boss. Now, a guy comes, applies for a job, he's a thief. You don't say anything. He said, you're not saying anything is a lie. Because now your motive is to hurt and not help. So these little, I would say with the mandali, that's why I would recommend to anybody, read as much as you can, watch the videos, talk to people who've been with him, because they were able to take so many things and because of their life experience with Baba, they knew how to take things that we deal with on a daily basis and put it into practice. And one of the things that I struggle with all my whole life, I still struggle with it, is that there are many aspects about myself that I don't like. It's caused a lot of problems for me. It's caused problems for other people. And Erich told me a couple of things. One thing he told me, and like I say, I'll share this because I think it applies to everybody. He said the most important spiritual quality that anybody can develop is patience. So we not only have to be patient with other people, we have to be patient with ourselves and give ourselves, whether how many lifetimes it takes, just be patient with yourself. But then he also told me this story. He said that when he first joined Baba, prior to being with Baba, he had a lot of friends, and they would, and even when he first joined Baba as a young lad, his friends would come around and they'd want him to go do something, and he could never leave because Baba always kept him busy. And so one time, one of his group of friends came. They wanted him to go do something. He said, "I can't go." And this fellow said, "But what good is it you being with him? You're not as nice as you used to be. You always had time for us. Now you have no time for us. So you say you're with this man who's a master, but what good is that doing you? You're not a nice person." So he was, Erich was telling the story that somehow or other this came up and he told Baba about it. Baba asked him, he said, "Do you know how sugar cane is made?" And he said, yes. And Baba said, "Tell me, how sugar cane made?" He said, "Well, of course, the cane is grown in the field." And Baba said, "And then what?" He said, "Yeah, it has to be harvested, right?" And Eric said, "Yes, they harvest it." And Baba said, "And then what do they do?" And in those days, there were big vats out in the fields. And they would take the cane, put it in the vat, and somebody would stir it. And Baba had Erich go step by step. And he said, "But you can't, can you use the sugar cane?" He said, "No, you can't use the sugar cane yet. Can't use it." He said, "Why?" Baba said, "Why?" He said, "Well, because when you stir it, the impurities have to come to the surface." And Baba said, only when the shit comes to the surface and it gets skimmed off, then the sweetnesses that can be used. The inherent sweetness is there, but it's not usable until all the shit comes away. So that's for each of us, I think, but as I say, I'm signing up as a, I need a lot of stirring and a lot of that because there's a lot of stuff to come to the surface. I'm sorry, am I rambling on too much?
Oh, very good. Very. Hey, what about the time you came to the tomb for the first time?
Yeah. And again, I've been very, as I say, I just consider myself blessed because Erich, he just dealt with me beautifully. So prior that first trip to India, we had stayed, I was married at the time. We stayed for 2 weeks at the center, watched a lot of films about Baba. And one of the films that I saw, and I didn't know anything about India, as I say, or any of the traditions or anything like that. I was an Italian kid growing up in Brooklyn in the Catholic faith, so I didn't know anything about any of that. So I would see Baba handing uh, what I found out later was called prasad, and I think Marshall Hay at the time was explaining the videos because he was there for many many years, and he would say yes, Baba would hand people prasad, and then I would read that prasad was a gift from the hand of the master to man. So now I go off to India. This is one of the very first things I do. I walk up to the samadhi and I go in the samadhi, and when I pay my respects, and when I come out, there's this little tiny Indian woman, Mansari, for those of you who knew her, 4 foot nothing. I mean, she was just a tiny, tiny little thing, and a force to be reckoned with also. There were only a few people permitted to live at Mehrabad after the New Life, and she was one. She stayed there until her passing, and Kaikobad's daughter. So the 3 women were up there, but nobody else was permitted to live there. So anyway, I come out of the samadhi, and here's Mansari, and she's got a couple of pieces of this orange candy, and I'm going, "What's this?" She said, "It's prasad." And she showed me how to hold my hands out, and she put the prasad in my hand. And it bothered me. I didn't say anything to her, but it bothered me. So a couple of days later, I was at Nerazad, and Erich would go for a walk every day. And
Nick, why did it bother you?
Why did it bother me? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't from Baba's hand.
Ah,
It was this little lady. She was calling it prasad. To me, it was. So anyway, I was walking with Erich, and this was on my mind. And Erich, like Jal, both of them would oftentimes say, what's troubling you? They would sense that something was going on. And I told him, I said, Erich, I told him what happened about being in the samadhi. And he said, but I said, it's not from Baba's hand. He said, what do you mean it's not from Baba's hand? I said, well, it's this Mansari, this little lady is handing me candy and telling me it's prasad. Erich looked at me. He said, brother, he said, the very air you breathe is prasad if you take it that way. It's all from his hand. Everything is from his hand. And if we put too fine a point on it, this is not, this is here, this is there. To me, we either have to trust him or go find somebody else. As a nurse, I used to tell people they want to come in and put their doctor through the 3rd degree. I said, if you don't trust your doctor, go find one you trust. Don't have somebody that you don't trust and spend all your time being critical of them. How important is that with your master, with your divine Lord? If you don't trust him, go. Or resolve your trust issues. Because the problem's ours, they're not his. And he's happy to wait as many lifetimes as it's going to take us. Baba doesn't care. He said, what I want you to do now, you can do now, or it can take many lifetimes. As Bao used to say, you're going to have God realization, whether or not you want it, you'll have it. Those were Bao's words all the time. You can't escape it because we're sort of like leaves caught in a rainstorm being swept down a river. And that's all of humanity is like that. We're all being swept down this river. And just like leaves, we have no control over where we're going. The only thing we can do is relax and enjoy the ride. Eric said to me one day, and it's taken until this last year for his words to really have an impact on me. I was walking with him one day, out of the blue, completely out of the blue. He said to me, the day will come when you will welcome suffering. He said, don't invite it. He said, but when it comes, you will welcome it. Now, at the time, I was 35. I was strong. I had happy marriage, children, wonderful business, had plenty of money in my pocket. I didn't have anything on my life that needed repair. This past December 26th, they told me I died twice because of a bad heart. And I realized that, and by the way, that got repaired. So Bob has given me some more time. I don't know, whatever it is. But I realized the wisdom of Erich's words, because like all of us, we all try to repeat Baba's name. We try to remember Baba, however we can do it, whether it's with a prayer or whatever it is. But I realized for me that all of my repetition of Baba's name was up here, wasn't here. And when that suffering was really there, when I called out to Baba from the depths of my being, I heard a voice that was not my own voice when I called Baba's name. It felt like it came from someplace way down deep in my being. And when I called out to him, he was there with me. And I realized as soon as the suffering began to subside, his presence was not as constant with me. He was with me for 2 solid weeks, sitting in the chair with me, sitting right beside me. Because my memory of all I wanted to do was say his name and think about him. And it was calling out, not just, oh, Baba, I'll have another bite of sandwich, or oh, Baba, and I'll have a sip of a, Coke or something. No, it was just Baba, just and the depth of that. And so the wisdom of Erich's words really came home to roost for me. That it's and Baba had said many times that suffering is the key to our spiritual growth, because we have to learn to deal with it, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. For those of you who knew Fred Winterfeld, he was the caretaker at the center for many years. I met Baba in the 50s. Baba had stayed at his place, and he was a manager of Manhattan House in New York. Fred told me one time, he said, the spiritual journey is from here to here. And I didn't know what that meant until this suffering. I realized that all of that prayer, remembrance, all that was here. It had to come down to my heart. And I think that's why sometimes when we read something about Baba, or we hear something from the mandali, whatever, it sits up here, but it doesn't always percolate down to the heart. It may, for some people, it can happen in a flash. For me, I'm pretty hard-headed. So it's taken a while for it to, get through all that dirt that it's got to filter through. But the mandali, I think they, having lived through it all themselves, my last memory of seeing Mani, she already had this brain tumor or whatever it was that she ended up dying from. And Dr. Gulnar had a motorized scooter, like a little disability scooter. And Mani was on that scooter, and she was going from the house, from their house at Marizon to Mandalay Hall. Mani, I wish I would, it's the one time I really wish I was an artist and could paint. Mani was concentrating so hard, she had her tongue like on the scooter, and I realized she was having a good time. She was making the best of the situation that she was in. So, as a matter of fact, I was chatting with a fellow this morning about my age, and he said, yeah, he just seemed to have a great attitude of life. And I asked him about it. He said, well, you know, I live by the rule. He said, growing up, no, excuse me, growing old is mandatory. Growing up is obligatory. Is yeah, you don't have to do it. It's a choice. We all have to grow old. You don't have to grow up. And so I that's the sense that I had, I think, with all the Mandali. They all had a youthfulness about them. I asked Kitty one time, Kitty's legacy is her personal legacy to me. She had incredible enthusiasm. She always was looking forward to the next thing she was going to do. Like I said, we'd go out to dinner. She'd lock arms. We were in Dilruba one time, bundled up against the cold, getting ready to go out. And we locked arms, and she said, barely above a whisper, she said, "Oh, Nick, I hope you have some good gossip for me tonight." And from the back room, we heard Elizabeth shout. She said, "Kitty, you won't gossip tonight now, will you?" But Kitty was always, she was childlike. She would smoke one cigarette a day. Baba permitted her one cigarette a day. She'd bum a cigarette. We'd take her to dinner. She'd bum a cigarette. And she was just, just enjoying life. When I met her and she was in her mid 80s, she was riding a bicycle on the beach. And again, a special connection. A lot of people don't know Kitty was great niece to Florence Nightingale. And I was in nursing school, and that's how that subject came up. Um, but Kitty, I asked her, I actually invited her to come out to the school. Florence Nightingale, the most famous nurse in the world, and she, no, 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 no. Just if they want to talk about Baba, but I'm not going to talk about anybody else. That was that. But I asked her one time, I said, Kitty, how do you keep your enthusiasm? And she said, Nick, do you know the root of the word enthusiasm? And I said, no. She said, entheos, in God, in the state of God. And when she said that, what immediately struck me is the biblical admonition, lest you become like little children, you should not enter the kingdom of heaven. And I think that's why I say the Mandali all had that childlike, not childish, but childlike quality, this innocence, this fun, the ability to laugh at themselves. And Mani, oh, yeah, and Jal, Jeff, you remind me after a bit, I'll tell you a story about Jal's sense of humor. But yeah, it's, no matter of fact, I'll just, yeah, might as well tell it now. Jal was, Jal was the jokester. And in those days, the early days, all the Mandali would encourage all of us young Westerners. He said, you have to learn a joke to tell it to Baba. Because Baba would always ask people for jokes. And he said, if you get to be with Baba, then you have to have a joke ready so that if he asks you, you have a joke. So Jal was famous for being the jokester. Matter of fact, one story leads to another. Baba one time sent Jal to go get Margaret Krask. They were in, I forget where they were, it doesn't matter. But the women were staying aside. Baba told Jal, go tell Margaret I want her. And Jal went and told Margaret, and Margaret just nodded. And after a while, Baba asked Jal, he said, what happened to Margaret? Did you tell her? He said, yes, Baba, I told her. He said, tell her again. Went back a second time and told her. After a while, she still hadn't returned. This time, Baba sent somebody else. He said, go tell Margaret to come here now. So Margaret came down. Baba said, why didn't you come before? I sent Jal twice. She said, Baba, Jal always kids around, so I thought he was kidding around. And Baba said, Jal will kid about the entire universe, but he'll never kid about me. So Jal, in the early days of being with Baba, how did he develop the sense of humor? Jal was, Baba was what, not in his 20s, I guess, when he was in Manzili Meme. Jal was younger than him. So Jal would have been barely out of his teens, a youngster. And, but so Baba, the order at the time, of course, he wasn't going by the name Meher Baba at the time. It was Merwan. The family nickname for him was Merog, Merog, was what they called him. And but the order was whenever Baba was leaving to go do anything, whether it was to find the must, to go for a walk, whatever it was, whatever the mandali were doing in Manzili, they had to stop what they were doing and immediately follow Baba. And it could be at any odd hour, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, whatever it was, especially if Baba heard there was a must someplace. And Jal said those tramps were very, very difficult because the men would be groggy. They all get up, and somebody would be on night watch, but everybody else was sleeping. And all of a sudden now, 1 or 2 hours sleep, and Baba's up, and they have to quickly throw some clothes on and go out. And here they'd be tramping because Baba got some word that there was a must someplace. And so one of these tramps, Jal said, that was so difficult because there was no tea. There was no breakfast. There was nothing, and the men were all grumbling, and Baba did not like grumbling at all. So Baba's in the lead, walking, and they're all trailing behind. And Baba gestured to Jal to come up with him, and Jal did. And Baba said, "Now," he said, "everybody is grumbling, they're not happy." And Jal said, "Yes, Baba, they need a tea or something." Baba said, "Well, we can't stop now." He said, "But tell them a joke, tell them something to lighten the mood." And Jal, so he goes back, he's with the men, and he's thinking, what am I going to do? He's got to come up with some idea to make Baba happy and to satisfy that wish. So after a few minutes more of walking, Jal says, Merwan, Baba. Yes, Baba turns. But of course, he wasn't observing silence yet either. And he said, I have a confession to make. And they're still walking. And Baba said, well, what do you mean you have a confession to make? He said, Baba, he said, I stole something. Now Baba has an excuse to stop the tramp. So all the men stop, they're gathering around. And Baba said, what do you mean you stole something? Seriously? He said, yes, Baba. He said, but if I didn't steal it, I would be breaking your order. And Baba said, I never gave you an order that you can steal anything. He said, tell me, explain this to me. He said, well, Baba, he said, you remember the month or so ago, I had a sore throat and you sent me to the doctor? He said, yes. He said, now, he said, when we stopped 3-4 days ago, we had tea. And when we had tea at the hotel, do you remember? And Baba said, yes, of course I remember. What's that got to do with this? Jal said, Baba, he said, I stole 2 spoons from the restaurant. And Baba said, why did you do that? He said, Baba, you told me I had to obey the doctor. And the doctor gave me medicine and said, take 2 spoons with breakfast. So then, of course, everybody had a laugh. And that was Jal's way of, his sense of humor was really rather unique. He was in Hollywood with Baba in 1932. And Baba, as you probably know, went to Paramount Studios. He toured. There was going to be a party for him at Pickfair, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford at their estate. And Baba wanted all these Hollywood folks to come. And he'd met many of them as they were walking around Paramount Studios. One of the people that Baba met was Boris Karloff, if you know who that was, played the Frankenstein monster. He was a classic British theater actor. And Baba specifically wanted Boris Karloff to come to the party. And he told Jal, he said, make sure you invite Boris Karloff. So Jal went and he said, no, I can't. I've got things to do. I'm not really interested. And Jal said he tried his best to kind of coerce him to whatever. And finally, Boris Karloff, more to get rid of Jal than to do anything else, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, if you can make me laugh, I'll come to the party. And the reason why he said that is because he prided himself, because of his theater training, that he could control his emotions. And Mani is telling me the story, and she said, Jal had him laughing, completely laughing. And Jal kept up correspondence with Boris Karloff's entire life until one of them died. So yeah, Jal was rather unique that way. But one other thing about his sense of humor for the mandali, they were so, like I said, they were like children in ways, but in the most innocent way. So I happened to be in Bao's office in the trust compound when he was announcing that he was going to come to the States. And again, Baba's blessing that I happened to be there, because I immediately invited him to Chapel Hill. And he said, yes, he instructed, I think Christine Pearson in California was arranging the trips. He told John, who was Connor, who was his secretary at the time, he said, write to Christine and make sure Christina knows to put Chapel Hill on the list. So now Bao, for those of you who have seen photos of him, Bao did not look like a spiritual being in the classic Western sense. He would wear suspenders. He had a bolo tie and a t-shirt, and he just did. I saw him one time at the Samadhi Amartithi, and here is this sannyasin who's there dressed in ochre-colored robes, and he's standing next to Bao. And here's this guy in his robes and the long hair and the beard, and here's Bao with a cowboy hat and a bolo. And I'm thinking to myself, who's the more spiritual of the two? Who's with God? It was so anyway. My sense of humor and my daring with the mandali, which Baba just would kick me in the butt and say, go ahead. So I told Bao. Now Adi had already been to the States. I guess the summer of '76, I think, was when he was here, '77. So, and I was in India for 3 months. And this trip, let me see, might have been 80. So anyway, Adi had already been to the States. So I'm with Bao, and he's going to come to the States. And I said, Bao, one thing though, when you come to the States, he said, what is it? I said, you can't dress the way you're dressing here. He said, what do you mean? And the people who are in the office they're shocked. They're going, how can you say that to him? I said, Bao, when Adi came, he had a jacket with Nehru collar. He had a scarf. I said, he looked like a disciple of a guru. I said, you look like, a plumber. I don't know. You don't look like, I don't know how you're going to have anybody pay attention to you. He got it that I was teasing him. He immediately got it. Anyway, he laughed and I laughed, and that was the end of it. Gone. So now time passes and he shows up, and I give him the room that he's going to be staying in. And I slept in the living room floor, so that if he needed me, I would be, close by. John Connor was at a room in the back. My daughter was bedroom. My wife at the time was in a bedroom. And I'm on the floor there. And all of a sudden I hear him rustling around, and I kind of look over, and his door is open and the light's on. And it's, I don't know, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. And I walk into the room, and here is Bao sitting there with a sadra on, a scarf around his neck, sitting like, and I lost it. I just burst out laughing. because everything I suggested to him, this was how he dressed. And I was laughing so hard. John comes running in. My daughter wakes up. My wife gets up. And they said, what's going on? I said, look. And he sat there. He was so proud of this. And John Connor, who said, now I understand. He said, I couldn't figure out when I was packing all of his things. He said, make sure you take the Sadra thing and make sure you bring a scarf. And John said, but Val, you never wear that. Why? He said, never mind, you pack it, you'll see. So I have a photo of Val with that, where it's, just sitting in that chair with that kind of like, looking like an Eastern, more like a disciple. But their humor, their sense of humor, their kidding, teasing, and many of these things I wouldn't, if they were still alive, some of these stories I wouldn't even tell you, because and the reason for that is that, and I was talking to Jeff earlier. He said, well, what about this and what about that? I said, yeah, one of the times I was in Mandali Hall and somebody asked Erich about one of the Mandali who was still alive, and Erich said, no, don't ask me about anybody's alive. After they die, I'll tell you about them, but not now. You go and talk to them if you want to know. So, a lot of these things I would, like I said, feel comfortable because they're gone now. So it's like family memories.
Hey, Nick,
Yes.
how about telling one of your jokes
My joke for Baba.
about that, that
Sure.
very
Yeah,
simple monk?
There's only one that I have for Baba. He's heard it so many times now because I tell it to him a lot. So the story is that the Pope hears that there is a very saintly man living up on high in a mountain, and people are referring to him as a saint. And the Pope's a little concerned about that, because you shouldn't call somebody a saint while they're still in the body. But the Pope keeps hearing. They said, oh, yes, Holy Father. Pope asked, he said, yes, Holy Father, people say he's a saint. So the Pope decides he's got to find out for himself. He gathers his advisors. They go up, they get on the donkeys, and they ride up this mountain. They find this monk, and here's this little 2-room little shack on the side of a mountain. And Pope knocks on the door, and sure enough, this little monk opens the door, recognizes the Pope, falls on his knees, kisses his ring. He said, Holy Father. He said, to what do I owe this honor? Am I dreaming? He said, no, my son, I'm here, and yes, I am the Pope. He said, well, may I come in? And the monk says, of course, Holy Father, come in. And he walks in. It's just a very simple room. It's got a little area for cooking. There's two, a table and a couple of chairs. And the Pope looks around. He says, very simple. He says, you don't have very much here. He says, well, I don't need very much, Holy Father. He said, well, how do you spend your time? He said, well, I spend my time in prayer. He said, well, what do you do about food? He said, well, Holy Father, I don't need much. He said that some of the local shepherd children, they bring me some cheese and some goat milk, and that's all I need. And he said, he said, but I have some grapes, and I make a little wine. And he said, is that all right, Holy Father? He said, oh, yes, my son. He said, even our Lord Jesus gave his disciples wine. And the monk says, Holy Father, would you, the Pope says, well, but tell me, what else do you do? You have a whole day. He said, well, I spend my time in prayer, and I have my rosary. And then after I have my rosary, then I have a little wine. And he asked the Pope, he said, would you like a little wine, Holy Father? He said, yes, my son, I would. Rosary, bring us some wine. Yeah. So any man can be a saint as long as he's got a rosary and wine.
Now, let's see, it's getting kind of late, and this doesn't have to be the first time you visit us, because you have a wealth of stories. But how about let's just see if anybody has something to any questions.
I have one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Who is it, please?
Rosalie.
Rosalie. Hi,
Oh,
Nick.
Rosalie.
Hi. When I first got to India, and there were several of us, and we stayed overnight at a hotel in Pune. And who comes to the door but Joel? He was just really actually. Different people have warned me. They says he'll want money from you. He'll whatever, on and on. And on the way over, we were with one person, and he was a retired military fella, and he was like regimenting us. So finally, we were exhausted from the trip. We spent the night at, I think, the National Hotel.
Yep.
Yep. To the door, and he was like an angel. He was like, no more military. It was like, but what I wanted to ask you, he was so joyous. He kept saying something about we're like frogs in the well of illusion.
The well of illusion.
And then what did he say? You must jump out of the well. What did he say? I was trying to remember. All I can remember is frogs in the well of illusion.
Yeah, and we had to climb out. We had to climb out of the well.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
He was absolutely delightful.
See, the thing about Jal, if I may, the thing about Jal, Baba had given him the job to be his emissary for Westerners. You see, Baba sent Jal to live in Pune. And so Jal stayed in Pune. And when the 69 Darshan happened, Jal was the point person for that in Pune, for those people who went. Now, interestingly, and the thing about money with Jal, is it's unfortunate because Westerners, we have a very sensitive money button. If anybody mentions money and we think they're using it for themselves, Jal did not even own a belt. He had a string to hold his pants up. He had nothing. But Jal, when Baba told him to go to Pune and he said, be my emissary for the 69 Darshan, because nobody knew Baba was going to drop the body. And Baba said, you have to help these people and take care of them. And Jal said, but Baba, how will I do that? I don't have any money. And Baba said, don't worry, when it's time, I'll take care of it. So now Baba drops the body, and Jal is wondering, this is the end of January, and Jal's wondering now, people are going to be coming now in a couple of months, and how is he going to do anything? He has no money of his own. So he gets, and Jal is explaining this to me. Jal gets a letter from a fellow in California, and he wants to know, he's coming for the Darshan, wants to know if there's anything that Jal wants or needs that he'll be happy to bring from the States. So now, while that's happening, there's an Indian friend of Jal's who says to him, to Jal, he said, if one of your people can bring me some Kodak film, he said, I'll give you money and I'll be happy to buy Kodak film to bring from the States because the film in India was not good quality. So Jal writes back to this Westerner and says, yes, would you please bring, 4 or 5 rolls of film? This guy shows up with an entire bag of film, however many it was, 12, 2 dozen, but a bag of film. And he gives them to Jal, and Jal's okay. He brings them to his friend, and the fellow knows how much it costs. He pays him. The Westerner refuses to take the money. And Jal realized that's how he had money. Because when he said that he came to the National, Jal would go, he had Westerners in different hotels in Pune, and he would take rickshaws to go, and he would, because he met us in the National, in the coffee shop downstairs. So, we watched him pull up in a rickshaw, and he paid the rickshaw out of his own pocket, you see, and then came in to have tea with us. Now, when we went out, of course, if we went for lunch or we went for, a meal, then of course, I would pick up the tab for that if we rode together in a rickshaw. But he not only was doing that with us, he was going with other people. So he was spending money. And plus, aside from that, the stamps alone, because he was corresponding to everybody around the world. So he was writing and stamps. He had no money. So Baba took care of it. But in his very early days with Baba, Jal said that when Baba would have darshan programs, and if there was going to be collection of money from Andhra, Dehradun, wherever it was, Baba would announce that he needed so much money and ask people if they wanted to, help in his work. And then he would send Jal to pick the money up. And Jal said he would ride on the train with a satchel full of rupees. So he was Baba's bag man. He was Baba's money man. So, yeah. But he never owned anything himself. He owned he didn't even sleep laying down. He slept sitting up in case Baba called him, he said.
Yeah,
Always
I was never worried because I didn't have any money anyway. So, but he was the absolute angel. And one other thing I wanted to ask you, just some experience with Mara you had. It was 45 years ago today that I met her. So I'd like to hear just something, some impression of Mara from you.
As far as I'm concerned, Mara is the female aspect of divinity.
Mm.
She is, unlike all the rest of humanity, we are all ascending. We're all trying to be, whether it's mandali or achieve something. We are mankind, trying to become God. God, Meher Baba, is the God man. He's God, he's descended. He's come down and taken human form. As far as I'm concerned, and I have lots of reasons to believe this, is that there is that female aspect who is
Yeah.
just veiled. Baba, and I'll share one thing with you that I can, there's some things I can't share. When I was really convinced of this, when Baba had said Mani, of course, as people know, Mani's going to be a perfect master. When after Mara dropped the body, when I saw Mani go pay her respects in Baba's Samadhi and then go to Mara's Samadhi, I knew that she was that was how the order is. And I've since learned since then, and again, I can tell you this, but I can't tell you how I know. But Baba had said, remember, he said this to people that I trust. He said, remember, he said, I am number one, Mara's number two, Mani is number three. It supersedes everybody else. So Mara, her love and attention. My first trip to India, as I was married at the time, we had just uh, had the loss of a child, and the Mandali really took us in and nurtured us. I was at that time in my late 20s. My wife at the time was barely out of her teens. And we first pregnancy and the baby died. But I'll save that story for another meeting because Baba's brother named that child.
Mm.
But when we went to India, the ladies, of course, took Beth, my wife at the time, took her under their wing and just really treated her incredibly kindly and just nurtured her and looked after her. And I was sitting, and I was rather a little bit jealous because here she is with the women, and there were almost no Westerners. Like I say, there were half a dozen total, so there might have been 3 or 4 men, and we're sitting on the benches outside with Erich and Pendu and Alaba running around, and all of a sudden Shelley comes out with a metal tray with fruit on it, and she brings it to me, and she said, Mara sent this to you and said not to share it with anybody.
Wow.
Yeah. So I sat there with custard apples and mangoes.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, their love and consideration for us was beyond anything. I had no human here, even my own family, my own parents, and nobody that showed us that
Yeah.
kind of love and compassion.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, we got a number of hands here. I'm going to go to Goer.
Jai Baba, Nick.
Baba dear, hi.
I'm the daughter of Minu Kharas. I don't know if you know of him or heard
I
of
do, yes.
him. Okay. Well, first of all, I enjoyed your stories so very much. Just brought me so much joy to hear all of them, and just wanted to thank you for that. I just wanted to know, had you met Baba physically, or did you come to him after he dropped his body?
I found out about Baba when he was physically alive, but I did not get to meet him physically.
Ah, okay.
Matter of fact, my first emotional reaction to Baba was really one of anger, because I went to the center in the very first time in March of 1969, and found out that everybody was preparing for going to the Sahavas, and I did not know anything about it, and I didn't know Baba dropped the body.
Oh,
So I was, but I will share this with you. Many of us at that time, we were standing around with Padre, and somebody said something about, gee, I wish I would have been here and met Baba. And Padre, in his inimitable way, went, blah. He said, sir, he said, you all had to be with Baba or you would not be here now. So there's nobody, as far as I'm concerned, there is nobody that doesn't have a connection with Baba. We just don't remember it.
yeah, true.
We have to, as far as I'm concerned, we have all had to be with him. And I think for those of us who have any interaction with Baba children, that's really where I see that, is with the Baba children. Baba said it was the new humanity.
Yeah.
And when I see these children, their depth of understanding, their connection to Baba is just incredible. They had to have a link for a very long time. Their sophistication is, I have a daughter who's 35, and I'm just, what is the chocolate Willy Wonka say? I'm gobstopped sometimes by just her relationship with Baba.
Right.
And her just kind of reminding me periodically. It's sort of like your child's to a man.
Yeah. It comes from within. It's innate. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, we all have that connection, or I say, I don't think we'd be this close otherwise.
True. True.
Let's put it this way. I like to think that, even if it's wrong. Erich used to say, as long as you involve Baba, it's fine.
That's
Just
right.
involve Baba.
Very true. Thank you, Jay Baba.
I got Joshua Wolterding.
Yeah,
Let's see. Oh, good, he's there.
yeah, hey.
I'm trying not to let that boost my ego. You know what you were just saying about the Barber kids. You know, I'm trying not to let that just inflate me beyond all capacity to ever receive God realization. But yeah, my one question is, obviously this is just your opinion, but in your opinion, what do you think the mandali's most important message for Barber lovers of the future would be?
Repeat
Like, what if they could ground it down to one critical message in your experience of the mandali, combining all the mandali together? What do you think would their one message be for the people of the future?
Gratitude. We should be grateful all the time and recognize everything that's going on around us, which the world might consider terrible, but it's all the fruit of his working. You know, I asked Erich one time, I said, why there's so much suffering now and the avatar is in the body, the avatar is here. And Erich said, you know, brother, he said, if you have somebody has a boil, but before the boil can be lanced, it's got to come to the surface. And only then can the surgeon lance the boil and drain it. He said, so all of the stuff that you see going on is that boil is all coming to the surface. It's all that pus that's in the world. It's all coming to the surface. And so we shouldn't look at it as, you know, I mean, it's a very difficult balance for each of us to strike, because on the one hand, to be grateful to Baba, but how do you go to your friends and say that you're really happy and they've just lost their homes? You know, I mean, I know intellectually that it's a blessing for them, but you can't tell them that. You know, nobody wants to hear that. When my child died, I didn't want anybody telling me, God, what a blessing that is for you. That was the last thing I wanted to hear. But that suffering, every bit of suffering is what brings us closer to him. And those people, look, I think of it this way. Nobody wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror and go, God, I look really good. And then you start to get dressed and you put your hands in your pocket and you pull out $100 bills that you didn't know you had. And you look over on, you had a good night's sleep, and you look over on your bed and there's this most gorgeous person that you really love. And, you know, and everything is all right. And then you go, I think I'm going to go kill myself now. It doesn't happen. People think about ending their life because of suffering. And suffering is really the way out of it, because the only thing that's under our control is how we react. We can't avoid suffering. We can't avoid it. And I'll tell you, as an old man, I can tell you it's every day. I live with it every day. But I try to, you know, do my best to be grateful. And instead of thinking about what I don't have anymore, I try to remember what I do have, and that's his company.
Beautiful, beautiful. We got two more questions.
Yes, sir.
We got Michael Childs.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Nicholas. I really love your talk. It's not the content so much as it is where you come from. You're so sweet. You're such a lover of God. It's just, I get this warm feeling listening to you. And I could just feel the mandali just saying, there's a man. There's a great lover of God. So that's how you have affected me. And I love the joke that you told, and it reminded me of a joke that I read in The God Man that Charles Purdom said was Baba's favorite joke. And with your kind permission and the okay of our leader, I'll tell the joke. Yes, Jeff?
Go ahead.
Okay, now this joke was also a part of the movie Men in Black, in case you haven't seen it. A man had a chicken, and he was very, very fond of his chicken. And one day he decides he wants to go to a movie, and he wants to take his chicken with him. So he goes up to the box office and says, 2 tickets, one for me, one for my chicken. And the person there says, no chickens allowed. You can't bring your chicken in here. And he was very concerned about it. So he went to the alley next to the theater and thought about it, stuffed the chicken in his pants. So then he gets his ticket, goes inside, he's sitting down, the movie begins. And he opens up his fly and the chicken sticks its head out so she can watch the movie too, because, what's the point? Now, there were 2 sisters sitting next to him, middle-aged sisters, Jewish, because I'm going to imitate a Jewish accent, which took me months to learn how to do it, even though I am Jewish. And it was, Mabel. What? We're watching the movie. Mabel, shh. What is it? The man next to me is exposing himself. Don't pay him any mind. Don't go away. But Mabel, this one's eating my popcorn.
And that was told to Baba.
Yes.
And I think Baba had it repeated for the benefit of Jane Haynes.
No, that was another one. That is
Oh.
a very funny story. She wouldn't tell me she told me the story. But Mickey Florsheim Baba had a meeting with the men, and they would tell these racy stories. And Jane was in the back with a friend, was sitting next to another woman anyway. And Baba says, Mickey, tell that story you told earlier. And Mickey was very embarrassed because it wasn't meant to be told in front of women. And it was about an elephant and a sports car. That's as close as I ever came to knowing what the joke was. So after the joke, Jane turns to her neighbor and says, I didn't understand that, did you? And to know that, you have to know that Jane was quite the Southern belle, very proper. I mean, she wore a hat and gloves, but one of the sweetest women I've ever known. And Baba turns to Mickey and says, Mickey, tell the story again. Jane didn't understand it.
Yeah. We got to find, I don't think there's anybody living who remembers that joke, because I've never heard it. Hey, but we got VJ, and then after VJ, we'll have maybe Mayor Prasad can come up with a final quote or somebody, and then we'll have a few moments of silence.
Hi, Jai Baba Nick. This is Vijay from Pune.
Hey, hi. Yeah. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I still remember the haircut from you. I can't
Wonderful.
forget.
You visited me in Chapel Hill many years ago.
Yeah, 1980, and that was I had a wonderful time, sweet time. I can't forget. So much love and care I got, and it's wonderful.
I still have your recording playing the harmonium and singing.
Yeah.
I still have
Thank
that on a cassette and I still listen to it.
Okay, yeah, very nice to see you. And please come again and again. We love your stories. And yeah, please, thank you. Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
my pleasure to share.
Nick, this was fabulous. It really, I mean, just, you kind of brought Baba here. We're we got to have a part 2, But so what we'll do is Mayor Prasad, do you have like a final quote? Then we'll have a few moments of silence.
Yeah, I have a quote.
Good.
Oh, I also have a funny guzzle, if you're interested.
Okay, or maybe though it's kind of late, Michael, save it for next time.
What if I get hit by a car?
Th- uh, We'll find your guzzle on the side of the road.
Jeff, may I?
And
May I?
well, is it a long one?
No, no, of course not.
Okay, read it first and then Mayor Prasad.
That sounds good. All I have to do is find it. I picked up a copy without my tabs. Wait a second.
Nick, this is a good short Baba quote.
Well-
I cannot rest unless I work. When I work, that is my rest. My work is in restlessness. Meher Baba.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you, Rosie.
Keep
I
that
got
one
it.
always on tap. Yeah.
Just perfect timing. Guzzle R. Often I catch myself thinking of nothing, or rather something that defies description. But if it was something, why does it seem like nothing? A nothing something totally absorbing, interrupted by telephones and customers, worldly duties, worries that extinguish the absent present something nothing, that beckons through the garbage like running in a dream, going nowhere and forgetting why. I see you. I know it's you. You're neither male nor female, nor an it. Yet you're quite human, but more so. You are everything. As I say that, I try to crowd everything into a little room, and that's not it. Let me try that again. Everything means everything before anything existed. It could be nothing except that the nothing is full of everything. Okay, let's recapitulate. Lord, you are a nothing something that is totally everything before anything existed, full and empty, except that everything and nothing cannot be full or empty, since nothing exists in everything before anything existed. Did I make myself clear? All right, I admit it. I don't know what it is I'm saying. Only I'm certain it is you.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Prasad, we'll have.
This is from the Perfect Master. What does perfection mean if it does not include material life? It is practical. One has to adopt that life which keeps materialism and spirituality in balance. How to do that? Lead the worldly life, attend to all your worldly duties, but long for knowing that which is beyond life. This longing will increase gradually, which will make you free and detached from material results. I will help you spiritually, and you will know how to do it. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Hey, Bob, everybody.
Jai Baba.
Wow. Nick, wonderful.
Baba's name be with you all.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Fantastic, Nick.
Yeah,
Love it, Nick. Like that.
yeah,
Thank you, Nick. It was incredible.
yep,
Thank
Baba, Jai Baba.
Thank you, Nick.
yeah.
Jai Baba.
you. Come again.
Jai Baba.
And before we go, we have to have Nasreen say Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
All right, yes. Avatar Meher Baba
Baba
Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai,
Avatar, Meher
Meher Baba Ki
Ki
Jai.
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 Baba Ki Jai.
Ki Jai. Ki Jai.
Wow.
Meher Baba ki jai.
Jai. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Baba
Thanks,
all.
Baba.
Wonderful. You
Bye-bye.
fed our hearts. Yeah,
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jeff. That was wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
yeah.
Night
And
all.
next, let me just mention that next Sunday is going to be Merwan Mehta, who met Baba. I mean, he's part of Erich's family, going all the way back to, his family goes all the way back to 1922 with Baba, right there in Ahmednagar. And that's Erich's mother grew up in that very house. And this is where Merwan Mehta grew up. But it should be very nice. I've never heard his story, but others have. So it'll be well worth it. That's this coming Sunday. All right.
Look forward.
Night all.
Stay back.
Night all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Amen.
Nick had my computer because we couldn't get him on his own computer. Okay, Jai Baba.